Class.
And I'm Jeremy, or Dr. J.
This is Good Parents, Good Children.
Parent better, so you can judge your friends. So the GPPs, the gentle, peaceful positives, they seem to have two main approaches that we've figured out when it comes to tantrums. The first is ignore the tantrum and continue whatever you're doing. And just kind of wait for the child to calm down. When they do, you can give them your attention again. It's actually kind of like a classic behavioral approach of saying, oh, these tantrums are for attention, which they may or may not be. These tantrums are for attention, so I'm going to ignore them.
And that is when it kind of could maybe sort of work.
If it actually were attention, which you do,
really
it may
attention.
or may not. Yeah.
Right. And if the cost of ignoring is worth it to the parent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a reason why we did mention that among our strategies. It sounds like a really obnoxious, unpleasant, high-cost strategy, and we're not huge fans of high-cost strategies.
That's right. It's actually pretty relationally painful for the child. You know, you're withholding one of the things that ought to be most valuable for them, which is the parental relationship. And frankly, that's not gentle or peaceful at all.
No, it's quite the punishment.
When you intentionally and swiftly punish in a way like exercise, even in a way like a short time out, that's relationally engaged. And Ronnie, since I know you, I know that when your kids do exercise, sometimes we do exercise because it's just about punishing them. It's not about distancing ourselves from what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if sometimes I'll have the kids do burpees because they didn't do what they were supposed to do, and I'll do the burpees with them. Absolutely. Yeah. Not every time, but sometimes. Yes. Yeah. And the ones who are being punished don't like it, but sometimes the siblings will join in with me, even though the other one's being punished.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just a side note.
The other one that we can tell is make sure the kids' needs are met. So if they're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, then feed them, soothe them, be with them, get them to bed. Really emphasize the empathetic talking as far as hitting what the kid's feeling, probably thinking, spending time, being relational and physically comforting the kid. And I got to say, man, some of this sounds pretty good to me. So you got to tell me what you're thinking about this stuff.
I mean, I think that can be fine depending on what's going on. I guess, so here's my concern, right? In a sense, I wouldn't really ever punish a tantrum, right? I would punish a disobedience, okay?
A disobedient behavior.
A specific disobedient behavior. So a kid drops to the ground when I'm trying to hold their hand and like walk them somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, I will say, I'll let go, and I will say, please stand up. Okay, if they don't stand up, well, then they're disobeying. And here's the thing about disobedience. With these tantrums, I'm thinking about 2, 3, 4-year-old kid, right? I need them to come when they've got to be as well-behaved as a well-behaved German Shepherd. Like, this is very possible. And I got that, to give credit where credit's due, that came from Love and Logic, which I'm not a huge fan of the Love and Logic books, but it is okay. And they make a fantastic point. 2- and 3-year-olds, they can be as well behaved as a good German Shepherd. They can pull this off. This is not outside their range.
So they can sit, they can stand, they can turn around, they can eat upon command.
That one might be a little tough. That one might be a little bit harder. But if you want them to sit, stand, come, shake, these are things that they should be able to do. Play dead. That's kind of like put your head in your pillow and be quiet, go to sleep. It's nap time. Yeah.
Okay.
But if I ask, a kid's tantrum, and I say, I need you to please stand up. Well, then they need to stand up. And if they don't stand up, then punishment may be on the table. So one of the concerns I have with this strategy is, I think it may be letting the kids set the pace to a degree that isn't fantastic. Now, if they're tantruming and I say, I need you to stand up, or I need you to lower your voice, or I need you to go to your room, whatever my directive is, and they follow my directive, then hot dog, there's a good chance I need to try to help meet their needs, because they have legitimate temptations, right? The purpose of this is not to have them keep all their temptations and then they behave perfectly in spite of being in a super difficult position. Removing the temptations and making it easy for the 2 or 3 or 4-year-old to behave is very legitimate. Don't have them be
Yeah.
super hungry or super, exhausted or whatever, right? Like you
Well,
help them meet those needs.
There's a couple of problems here, and I'm going to hit a couple at the same time. It takes a really long time to do this. And the gentle, peaceful positives seem to have built everything around a 1, maybe 2-child home. But really, it's a 1-child home. And so it's very child focused. You mentioned the child sets the pace. So this idea that the parent is always available to physically comfort the child and to do empathetic talk kind of until everything's resolved. And it just doesn't scale. It doesn't scale to a 3-child family. It certainly doesn't scale to larger families. And so if where I think it fits is empathetic talk, like we mentioned before, and noting what the child might be thinking, like we talked about before. Those things are great if they are swift and effective, because if they're not, if they're this more extended physical comfort, they can actually reinforce the tantrum because you got something good out of it.
Yes, that's a big problem. Yeah, the cost on the parent. So you don't want the kids to engage in behavior that's harmful to the kid, harmful for the family, harmful for innocent bystanders, and then engage in harmful for you, and then you engage in a high cost intervention that might reward that negative behavior. Like that is super not great. And if you watch these videos I mentioned from time to time, my wife and I, we have 7 kids, and we need our interventions to be quick and low cost because we have to multiply those times 7. I mean, obviously the situation we're dealing, we don't have twins. Yeah. We don't have any kids that are the same age. So they're all different maturity levels and phases of life. We've got, a kid that just turned 13 and a kid that just turned 1. And I need to be able to trust the older kids to do what they need to do while we're training the young little kids that are not as capable of doing what they need to do without more direction and help and guidance. So this stuff's got to work, and it can't take all day or all of our emotional energy. And I think the TLC approach, it's not that it's completely without merit, but the costs, not so great. So we've talked a little bit about like the definition of tantruming. Why? Okay, so, and I mean, obviously we've hit a little bit of the why they tantrum, because there could be a little bit of manipulation thing, right? Like they want something, but why else do you think kids tantrum? Or what do you think, like, the gentle, positive, peaceful folks, like those, people with those parenting philosophies, it's really, I can't tell the difference. It's kind of just one philosophy. What do they think it is? What we think it is?
Oh, why do they say it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. In preparation for this video, we actually dug around and found some real quotations. So these are from gentle parenting websites or positive parenting or peaceful parenting websites. They are all real. And so the first one is, it's all about the brain, and a meltdown is neurological. Okay. So tantrums, as we've described them so far, do involve emotional arousal. I was talking about neurohormones earlier, but here's the thing.
You sounded so smart, Jeremy, when you were talking about the neurohormones. I was very
sure.
impressed. You did. You sounded very smart.
The cortisol and whatnot.
The cortisol,
a tantrum is not a seizure, right? There is something that can happen in the brain that causes involuntary behavior, and that's called a convulsion. Right? A tantrum isn't even a drunken fit, right? It's not even loss of volition because of a chemical agent like alcohol, right? So the emotional arousal may not be the child's fault. There's probably a lot of interplay going into that. But behavior is voluntary, and so it is not, in fact, all about the brain.
Well, I really like the metaphor I've been using about like running programs, right? Excuse me. So you can think about like in marriage, my wife and I joke about this throughout our entire marriage. There's never a time that we're more likely to like argue over nothing or be grumpy with each other than right before a trip or vacation. Like we're and this was before we had kids even. It's like the entire time we've been married. It's like we're trying to get in the car, we're trying to get our stuff together. There's like this, it's a little bit more stressful. So we're just more likely. So that is kind of a program. And over the course of our marriage, we've realized, we'll laugh at it. It'll be like, we'll get a little bit grumpy and we'll be like, oh yeah, it's because we're about to travel. And it's like, we don't even get to the argument. It's just like, oh yeah, that's what it is. And so we have these, that's a negative program, but then we have sort of we laugh at it program that we also are able to sometimes run like automatically, right? Well, little kids will just sort of start down a path, and it's harder for them to know what to do, to recognize it, to intervene. That's sort of a maturity thing, right? Like, my 3-year-old boy is he's pretty gentle a lot of the time. He's real, he's pretty nice to his sisters, a decent amount of the time, I think. But if one of his sisters is sort of messing with him, like they take a toy he was about to play with, or they took his towel or whatever, right? There's like this thing going on, and they're sort of messing with him and poking him to see what he'll do. Then he'll sort of go onto this, I'm mad at my sister, I'm upset, and start crying or yell at them or whatever, like program, right? Well, if it's funny, if I walk into the room, he does oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this program. Like it shifts a little bit, and it's like, I'm not punishing him or anything. I'm just like, come on, buddy, what's going on? And then he'll, it's like, that's all it takes for it to like shift the perspective a bit.
Change the program.
Change the program. Like it stops, it halts the program.
Kind of been offering this shadow intervention the whole way through, which is just like redirect the kid's attention. It's just this small shift that you're mentioning. Oh, which it matches our next quote from a gentle, peaceful, or positive parent, because they said it becomes just about impossible to reason with them to calm them down. And well, you know what? That's actually probably true. You can't reason with somebody who's having a tantrum, nor should you be trying to. That's not the proper way to engage these things. So we think they mean something different. We think this is an instruction that kids can't obey or follow simple commands.
Right. Which is nonsense.
So you said, why do kids have tantrums? And we're doing kind of what GPP says, and then, what might really be happening. The manipulative tantrum is testing, right? There's a conflict happening between what the child is doing and what the parent really wants, especially if the parent is honest. And the kid is checking boundaries. They're checking how far can I get? How much power do I have?
How honest my parent is. Like if my parent said, these are the boundaries, are they trustworthy? Can I trust my parent to actually, because if you lay out a threat, right? You say, if you do this thing that I don't want you to do, then this bad thing will happen. Threats are promises. They want to find out if you're a trustworthy person or not. Trustworthy people follow through on their promises, including, and you lay a boundary.
That's one of the things that's happening. The other thing that's happening is we're finding out, will the child calm themselves down? In my head, it was, will the child learn how to activate their parasympathetic nervous system? Right.
There you go. Sounding smart again.
I know. And they should and could. But if you go in with the gentle parenting approach, and you have this belief that my kid can't calm down, I just kind of have to ride this thing out, then you won't expect it. So once again, we're thinking about, even if the kid's not fully in control of their emotions, not fully in control of their thoughts, they do have some control, and that's the piece we want to interact with by giving a simple command, by go to timeout, by giving a simple command, stand up, breathe out, stand up, breathe out.
Right. Okay. So let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
How do I get them to obey a simple command when they're in the middle of a tantrum?
You'd have to define what middle of a tantrum means.
Okay. During a part of a tantrum.
All right. So I'm imagining there's a child thrashing on the floor and screaming, and they're like, maybe even hitting furniture. We'll just go ahead and make it pretty severe. Is that okay?
Okay, sure. So how do you get them to obey a simple command during that?
Yeah, they're only going to do it if I have conditioned them with some program that they are going to obey in general, and that they are going to obey when they're emotionally aroused. So if I've done the legwork, then I can, fella, stand up, or hey, sweetheart, stand up.
You know what that reminds me of? Because I was thinking the exact same thing, right? Like you've got this program from before, you practice it, like you practice it when they're calm to get them to do what they need to do, right? But this is a weird metaphor or whatever, but it made me think of Firefly, right? What was the name of the girl, River or something like that?
River on Firefly.
Yeah, River, right. Okay, so like the bad guys had programmed her from before, where if she hears the magic word, she's going to go nuts, right? And then she kind of has a really wicked tantrum actually in her too. But spoiler alert from the show from 20 years ago. But like we're kind of doing the opposite, right? Like what is the script? What are the things that I say to them that they've heard before when they're calm? They know how to, you know, what to do. And because of that, I can say these things and turn it around. And I may not need any punishment if you reinforce this and you've got a good pattern.
There it is. And so it's how much punishment do we want? Just enough, right?
Yeah.
I want it swift, strict so that it's effective, so I don't have to keep doing it. Well, so I can just reinforce good
punishments are infrequent and very painful. Now you know, there's all kinds of different kinds of pain. My point is they're very unpleasant and often they're brief, right? A kid who isn't used to standing in the corner that much or standing in timeout very much, 30 seconds can feel like an eternity, right? The best way that timeouts can work is if you don't use them that often and you make sure that they're annoying and then you stop and then you use rewards and having a really good relationship with kids. I mean, this is something that I think is, you know, we're talking about like changing the program and using our words. Punishing a child for misbehavior during a tantrum is completely on the table and is very, very much okay also. Most of the work should probably happen when they're calm. But some of that can definitely happen during the tantrum, and you want to be consistent. Like if it's not okay, from my perspective, if I tell my 3-year-old to stand up, they need to stand up. And if I tell them to come here, they bloody better well come here. Like there's not coming here is not an option because I was going to bring up about safety. It's about safety and it's about making it so that our family has a peaceful, unified, enjoyable environment because kids act, if you don't train them, then they are immature and they do things that create a high cost for the family. So obedience and being able to respond when I give them directives is incredibly valuable and important for everybody involved. But, you know, so you lay out the groundwork, you can punish during the tantrum. But the other thing that's really important with all of this is, and I've kind of alluded to this, but what kind of relationship do you have with the kid, right? Like you need to already have a relationship where, you know, the kid likes being around you and has all, you know, a huge percentage of interactions with you are very, very positive and you've got a good trusting relationship. They're a tiny bit afraid of you because they know that punishment is a possibility. Like all of those things are really important and they help make sure the tantrums don't have to happen.
Well, I'm glad you brought up safety and relationships, Ronnie, because I was thinking again about our example from before. And if you had asked me, well, how do you get that kid to obey when they're in the middle of a tantrum? I think the answer has to become something like, well, I might not try. Like if it's that severe, then I'm developing a more rigid behavioral plan, right? Like maybe I'm working with a professional. Of course, at that point, I was the professional. But even in a situation like that, if I've started to lay groundwork and I'm convinced what I've got to do is get obedience because I need to reinforce it, then I'm probably gonna crisscross applesauce my legs on the floor and stare at the kid and stand up, and just repeat it until the child finally does. And then, oh my goodness, I'm so excited that you stood up like you were supposed to, and like, dump a bag of M&Ms on him or something. So there's
like a 1990s like kid game show of ooze, except it's M&Ms. It's like, yeah. That sounds, I have to say, I think about this from the perspective of preventing this problem from ever coming around. So I'm really glad that you're talking about, like, for somebody who hasn't prevented this and the kid's already having terrible tantrums, like, what do we do then? And you have that experience, by working with kids in these situations. So that's really nice. Well, let me hit you up with the next gentle, positive, peaceful, quote.
Oh,
it's important to know that tantrums are not happening because your child is defiant or naughty. A tantrum is your 3-year-old expressing their emotions. What do you say to that?
Oh man, where do you begin? All right,
I don't think I read that quite condescending enough. So I would just like to apologize to our viewership. Imagine I was much more condescending, because I feel like that's the only correct way to read that.
I think words have meaning, and how you use them matters even more. I mean, to say a tantrum isn't defiant calls into question what the word defiant even means.
Yeah,
right?
Like defiant just doesn't mean anything anymore. Like next to the word defiant, you should show a kid tantruming.
Your 3-year-old expressing their emotions is your 3-year-old's expressing their emotions. So, same as we do. There's affective representation and then saying an emotion word. Daddy, I'm so happy. That's your 3-year-old expressing their emotions.
Sure, yeah. Well, you're talking about, so if you express your emotions in a healthy way, not defiant, right? If you express your emotions in an unhealthy way that has the potential to be manipulative, now we're talking about defiance, or disobedient, right? Like, I am going to behave as if, because I'm sad, I don't have to obey. Because I'm angry, I get a free pass. I can do whatever I want. That's defiance.
Right. That's it. But there was one that was kind of like this. This is another real quote, really out there on the internet. A tantrum is an emotional response and not a bad behavior. As we've been saying all along, tantrums aren't emotions. Their tantrums are, in fact, a behavioral response to emotions. So, if a kid,
and there's like this whole thought, action, emotion, like soup going on, or casserole, right? Yeah.
Well, again, if the kid's not angry, it's not a tantrum. But if the angry kid isn't defiant or flailing, it's still not a tantrum.
Right, so because being angry is not necessarily a problem.
So the tantrum is optional.
Yeah.
The behavior, goodness, the behavior has to be present for it to be a tantrum. I don't know what else to say about that. Right. And
yeah.
And
well, and yeah, if the behavior, what's actually funny is the emotion doesn't actually have to be there for the tantrum to be there. If the affect was there and the behavior is there, then the tantrum is there. Now, that's still a tantrum. Well, these are people hardly imagine. Yes, I can't hardly imagine a person being able to show the affect and have the behavior and not have the emotion, and probably they will trick themselves into starting to feel that way. Even if they didn't start that way, the emotion will come, because if you act angry, then you start thinking angry thoughts, and if you think angry thoughts, then you start acting angry, and once those two things happen, then you'll feel angry. And the order for that can shift around, like it's not a rigid order. But I'm just saying, technically, it's a tantrum just with the affective emotion, not the emotion itself necessarily, and with the behavior. And affect is a form of behavior, by the way, like how you express your emotions. Now, it's semi-automatic. You don't have 100% direct control over it, but you can guide it, you can tempt it. It's kind of like herding sheep or herding cattle or something, right? Like, you don't have complete control over the herd, but you can herd them around and move them around. That's like affect emotions, right? You need to be herding them in the correct direction.
So you were talking about this business of the the affect can work up the emotion. And the whole time I was thinking about Bianca from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when she wants the golden goose. That's, Daddy, I want it now. And she's really excited, right? Because her daddy buys her everything. And so she's going to get it. And then, all right, Wonka, how much? Oh, it's not for sale. Daddy, I want it. And she just works herself up to it. But that's because she's practiced the program.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I honestly think that's such a good example, because you think about that kid, right? And it's like, I don't know how sincere her emotions are. And it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't make a difference. You look at the affect, there's a behavior there. You look at the behaviors she's got. The parents are totally rewarding the behaviors. You might as well assume the parents want her to behave this way. They, like, when she was little, they were like, you know what if we raised a daughter who uses negative emotions to get whatever she wants from us? Let's do this. Mission accomplished. They got it. They won the golden ticket. Like, they got exactly what they were asking for, because the enabling and the rewarding led to it.
Ronnie, as we were preparing for this, we found what we think is a hidden quotation. But if it's all right, I'd like to let you share it with the good parents.
Okay. So this is one of the things we think the gentle, positive, peaceful parents, or that philosophy, seems to imply. And that is, what really matters is how I feel about my parenting, right? So from what we can tell, there's almost like a sort of a virtue signaling piece to this, right? Like, the very loud advocates online, it's all about, like, well, I don't punish my children. You shouldn't punish your children. And punishment just leads to trauma, and trauma is bad. And if you punish, then that means that, like, if your parents punished you and you ever say, well, I turned out okay, then that's just you vocalizing your trauma and continuing it on your children. I'm not using their exact talking points, but it's like, it's like the same sorts of things. And it's like, well, I would never punish my children because punishment is blah, 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 terrible, terrible. And kids don't need to be punished. They just need to be able to allow them to express themselves and engage in, extreme unschooling, and they will, it's almost like kids are on a program where they'll all just sort themselves out naturally without guidance.
It's the anti-parenting.
Yeah.
Like the position is, I don't have to parent. Yeah. It's unparenting.
Right. And so, we have several mottos, I guess, but one of our big mottos is, you can parent, you may parent, you must
parent.
Right. And so that means you are able to do it. You have a responsibility to do it. And it's okay. Like, you're allowed to do it. Like, the gentle, positive, peaceful parents are kind of arguing that you shouldn't, right? It's not something that should be socially acceptable for you to use punishment to engage in a hierarchical relationship with your kids, where you assume, I know things you don't know. If I just let you run rampant and make your own decisions, they will be bad decisions. And that is all against their parenting philosophy. And the thing is, it's funny because, we're saying the hidden quotation, what really matters is how I feel about my parenting. I feel great about my parenting, but it's because I believe that it's the best way that I know to try to train my kids to be virtuous and competent, and to improve in that over time, like that. And it seems like it's working in that way. And I just can't imagine how no punishment, not having a hierarchical relationship, not expecting my kids to follow my directives, how that's a great idea.
Yeah.
How that's going to lead to good things.
We interact with some of the gentle, peaceful, positive parents sometimes online. And I don't just mean the ideologues or the people who are writing and interacting. I mean, with parents who are really genuine, and authentically trying their best. And when we interact with them, a lot of times what we'll hear about is shame and guilt for, oh, am I applying this program right? Or, oh no, I used to punish my kid, or the guilt I feel for imposing my values upon them. And it's really kind of all this very shame-based approach versus in a right-sided good parenting approach, you get to take the position that as I develop myself, so I develop my kid, or as I become a better person, my kid becomes a better person.
Oh, you know what? It's part of the reason why. Okay, so there's this question, can we impose our values on our kids? Well, I'm pursuing virtue myself. I'm pursuing competence. I'm trying to become, over time, I'm trying to pursue humility and wisdom and, being kind and being more honest with myself and with others and in general, just like try to improve in these virtues. And I see that through effort, that has occurred to some degree, right? Like it's an ongoing deal. As a kid, because of immaturity and not knowing how to value things, it was not as good. Well, I wish I could go back in time, right, and guide my past self. But I can't do that. What can I do? I can try to guide my kids. And then, it's really just gross. This is not really tantrums exactly, but it's just really gross and unfortunate, the implication that the GPP, the general positive peaceful parents, have of like, it's like, don't train your kids. Don't like, they have this thing of they hate obedience. You know what? I wish I could go back and make younger me obey current me so that I could be better then and then be even better now, but I can't do that. So, you know what? You better be better than you used to be. And if you're better than you used to be, then you're better and more mature than your kid is now. Help them be better. Like, come on, help them be better. You just watched one of our videos from our set of videos on tantruming.
If you liked it, remember to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And stick around for more videos on tantruming.